All right, so part two of module, what are we, module four? Let's see, module two, yeah, module four. Part two of module four, GUIs. So we're going to wrap it up tonight. Not a whole lot of new material tonight, for better or worse. So we're actually going to do we're going to build out another app in class together, play around with some sort of additional features. Um, the app is also going to be cool. I like doing this app, and I should know because I did it, because it also is going to represent sort of an incremental development framework. And so, part of this, as you begin to think about building more and more complex software, is how to build it out in stages. Right. And so, and theoretically, it's sort of thinking through, we've already talked about how to sort of segment, build it out, sort of build out features, but there's at a functional level, there's also a conversation to have around um, sort of building out your software in stages in a way that allows you to kind of incrementally expand and develop functionality. So let me give you an example about this. So tonight we're going to build a weather application. It's an application where you can select a city, and based on that city, it'll tell you what the current weather is. That's what we're going to build out tonight. Now, at the moment, it's not going to be necessarily that useful. I think because it's not actually, it's not going to actually tell you something. But what we're going to eventually do is we're actually going to get to the point where it is going to read actual weather info from the National Weather Service's API. So the idea is that your little app, you can sort of say, hey, what's the current weather in Pasadena? And it will tell you what the current weather is. It'll give you an accurate weather forecast for your app. So that's what we're building towards. But we need to have a conversation. That's where we're going to come into sort of networking. So stay tuned. That's going to be, I think, next module. But the point is, so tonight we're going to build the first part of it. We're going to build obviously the front end, and we're going to sort of hard code certain features. And the idea here is that this is a very standard way in which you sort of build out software, which again is rather than, trying to build out the entire thing A to Z, you scope it out into sort of smaller self-defined projects that allow you to sort of build, implement, test, refine, and then over time build towards your sort of full functionality. So in this case, right, what we're going to be building and testing out is going to be the front end UI, right? We want to, build out the user experience. We want to test and validate that, make sure that it looks and works and acts the way we want it to. And then once that's done, next step is going to be, oh, okay, now that that works, yeah, we were using what we call dummy data, and that's typically what we'll use when we're sort of, particularly when you're doing UI type work. Oftentimes, the first thing you do is just use dummy data, right? You haven't sort of plugged into your sort of your full stack data thing. You're not doing data handoffs, anything like that. So typically, you're just sort of either hard coding absolute values using dummy data, something like that. So that's what we're going to do. We're using dummy data where we're hard coding certain sort of things there to test it, to validate it. And the idea is then, okay, well, in a week or two, once we've talked about networking, once we've talked about communications, how your app can plug remote servers, pull in information that way, right? Request, get information, things like that, that whole network communication thing, we're going to revisit this app and we're going to sort of tear out the plumbing, if you were, where we're sort of hard coding it, and instead actually grab real data and place it in there. So the idea is by the end of this journey, you're going to actually have a fully functional weather app. Don't get too excited. I mean, it's nothing anything fancy, but that's basically the idea of where we're building out. So that's what we're going tonight. Tonight we build out the UI, and then in a week or two we're going to build out the back end. Um, all right. So let's see. So last week, big thing we talked about last week was, and sorry, let me pull this up. Where are we? No, no, this was the window I wanted. All right, so big thing, big sort of new paradigm that we discussed was sort of event-driven programming and this idea that, rather than programs being sort of linear progressions where, you run and there's sort of the sequence of steps it runs through to termination, you now have this idea that basically something will launch and will sort of be in a holding pattern. It will literally be listening for user events. And then when a user interacts with your program, when certain events are quote unquote fired, um, certain code will sort of react accordingly. And this was sort of a very different way of thinking about sort of how our programs operate, right? Getting away from this sort of linear thing to more of this um, passive server type thing where it sort of just is in holding pattern, it's in listening mode, it's in passive mode, and then it reacts to events that the user drives it. Um, so that was sort of the first thing. The other thing we sort of got introduced to was essentially the way in which object-oriented programming does UI work, which again is deceptively simple. Well, I shouldn't say deceptively simple. Deceptively is wrong because as a bad connotation, but it is surprisingly simple, given that you don't necessarily think of object-oriented programming as being good for UI work, right? Particularly if you're coming from like a web development space where you're used to, scoping out all of your little headers and subheaders and sort of building from the outside in. Here, everything is sort of defined in terms of classes and specific objects of that, where you have essentially, right, in this case, TK Inter. And by the way, it's not just TK Inter. Most, to my, I don't want to say all, but in my experience, all the UI that I've done, both in Python, but also in Java, in Swift, follows the same basic idea. You import a library, and the library includes all of these sort of functional classes for all these UI elements, because the reality is, if you think about it, right, most UI design, there's it's a pretty sort of standard toolkit of responsive elements, right? I mean, one app to the other, you're basically using kind of the same basic suite of input forms, different types of inputs, text, radio, checkbox, drop-down menus. Right? I mean, it's all pretty uniform and for I mean, arguably for better, right? The industry is sort of standardized around certain conventions for um, interaction on a user interface. And so these are all classes, and the idea is that sort of to build out your app, you essentially create object instances of these classes. And then typically customizations are input parameters that go into the object, that when the object is instantiated, you typically will sort of modify. You'll modify size, you'll modify color, you'll modify shape. All of these various sort of things are basically just input parameters that you then use to sort of modify it. And so that was sort of, I guess, kind of another interesting idea, right, of merging object-oriented programming with UI development. And then the third thing was the placement, the geometry of the thing. And spoiler, that's what we're sort of building into today, which is this idea that, that doing UI work in uh, an object-oriented programming language and typically, and specifically in Python, is typically a two-step process. There is the objectification, if you will, the step where you create the object, you bring it into your program, right? You instantiate the class, you create the object, and then there's the explicit placement of it, where it then goes in the broader application that you are sort of fitting in. Um, and so last week, so that's sort of hopefully a nice segue into this week. So last week we sort of briefly touched on this, and you may remember last week we did the very basic version of this, which is the packing. So, and by the way, so there's three, just sort of heads up, there's three ways in which TK Inter handles the physical placement or the arrangement of widgets, sorry, within a GUI. So the first one, and that's the one that we had seen last week, is just packing. So essentially, packing, you start with sort of a single dimension. It can be either horizontal or it can be vertical. A single dimension. I think it defaults to being vertical, but you can modify it to be horizontal if you wanted to. And the idea is when you pack, it just simply places and places and places and places. So, and the order in which you pack is the order in which it goes from top to bottom. So it's a really, really easy, just kind of basic. You need to sort of just throw some stuff up there. It'll allow you to do that. The second method, and that's the one that we're going to use tonight, is going to be grids. So now, obviously, a grid is, just think about like a grid. It's sort of it's a two-dimensional, right, plane. And specifically, grids have columns and rows. And the columns and rows give us essentially an addressing system or a coordinate system that allows me to sort of define where and how I place something in this two-dimensional space, right? Again, and I think it's easy, maybe the easiest way to think about this. So, okay, New York City is a great example. Anybody here not been to New York yet? Is that a yes, you haven't been to New York? Sydney, no, you have to go. Okay, new homework assignment. If you haven't been to New York, you have to go. I mean, that's just kind of one of those life things. Okay, Sydney, hop on a plane. This guy. We're gonna take a field trip. Well, the point is, if you Klaus, you were just there. Awesome. Hope for work, for pleasure. You don't have to tell me if you don't want to, um, but all right. So one of the greatest things about New York, New York isn't unique. Work and vacation, dude. That is the 1-2 combo, man. Get paid and get to spend time in the Big Apple. I will say, just as an aside, I'm my daughter is we're taking my daughter to New York this summer, and I'm so excited for that. Dude, like 5 years old is like the best age to go to New York, man. She's gonna do Times Square, Grand Central, Empire State Building. We're gonna take her for some bagels, some real New York pizza. We're gonna do it, right? We're gonna do the thing. She's gonna ride the subway. Now, admittedly, she's ridden a bunch of subways in Asia, and so like, but let's be honest, New York subway has character, right? I mean, in a way that like, I'm not saying it in a good way. I'm just saying it's got character, right? New York subway's got a personality. Um, other subway systems, a little bit more reliable, but a little bit more forgettable. Let's put it this way. Uh, So anyway, point is, why am I mentioning New York? Manhattan, famously, particularly above 14th Street, is a grid, right? Beautiful, beautiful, amazing grid. You may have never been there in your life. You know instantly how to navigate it, right? Just you got your north-south avenues and your east-west streets, right? So I can tell you, we're walking to Fifth Avenue and 34th Street. Boom, you got it. You got it. You're going from Fifth Ave, 34th to 7th Ave and 37th. Boom, no problem, right? It's beautiful. So I want you to think about that grid, right? I tell you an avenue, which tells you, like vertically where you're going, and then I'll tell you, well, I guess the avenues run north-south, so theoretically, actually, the placement is east-west. It's kind of, I guess, a little bit counterintuitive, but the avenue tells you where east-west, the street tells you north-south, right? How far north, how far south you are based on the street. So that basic idea, right? So put yourself in the mindset, you're in New York, you're navigating around. That's what the grid is. You just define your streets and your boulevards. Same basic idea. You define your rows and your columns. That gives you a two-dimensional coordinate that tells you where your widget gets placed. That's what we're going to do tonight. The third option is place geometry. Now, place allows for very, very precise specificity for your placement. It allows you to give precise pixel coordinates within the application plane where you do it. Um, Now, probably you can already intuit there's a little bit of a blessing and a curse with that, right? Blessing is you get really, really granular in where you get to place it. And if you're a if you're a stickler for that, can be really great. It does get challenging though, making sure that works for, different resolutions, different things, right? It can sort of be a lot. So not telling you to use it or not to use it, but just, know it can be challenging. So we're not going to use it tonight, but just, know that it does give you that option. So that's placement in a UI space. Any question on that? You guys feeling that so far? All right. So next up, toolkits. So, again, so one of I think the great things about Python in general is just how extensive the library is. I mean, literally, if you can think of a use case and you're like, can I do X in Python? If you ever ask that question, hey, can I do web hosting in Python? Can I run a web server in Python? Can I do you name the use case. Chances are someone else has had the exact same question. Someone else has gone ahead and done it and published it as a library. Oh, bud, hi kid, you want to say hi to everybody? Oh, does that mean you pooped? Does that mean you pooped? Yeah. Oh, you great kid. Here, you want to wish everybody good night? Now folks, Savannah here actually, she didn't go to school today. She was a little under the weather, little buddy, right? How you feeling now? You feeling better? Yeah. Yeah? Just a little bit better. Just a little bit better? Oh, buddy, no, 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 no. I want to say it is a new computer. It's not my new computer. This is my work computer. This is my computer that PCC gave me. I knew it. Yes, buddy. It's a little smaller than no, 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 don't. No, honey. Now the meeting ended. I don't know if the meeting ended, but honey, let's not push any more. Okay, no, meeting didn't end, but let's not push any buttons, okay? All right. All right, but you want to wish everybody good night? That was well done. All right, kid. All right, now, you want to close the door behind you, kid? Have a great night. I'm gonna read you a book, okay? Before bed. Boys, little all right, kid. I'm gonna read you a book tonight. Grab your slipper. Gotta go, honey. Your little math thing is starting in a minute. So you gotta run downstairs. Let's get you set up. All right, close the door behind you, buddy. Bye, bye. Oh, careful. All right, careful, buddy. Your hands almost got trapped there. All right, close enough. All right. Thanks, guys. Yeah, sick days. Always fun for the parents, right? All right, so toolkits. So yeah, so my whole spiel. Python. Um, if you ask, can I do X in Python? The answer is almost always yes. In fact, I mean, within reason. You're like, can I kill someone with Python? I mean, you could probably figure it out. But my point is like within reason, if you're like, can I do X in Python? Chances are someone has asked the exact same question, someone else has gone and done it and someone else has published it and made it available. So the reality is you can do basically anything in Python. In fact, right, that was that whole, that broad theme, jack of all trades, master of none. You can theoretically do anything in Python. It's not always the case you can do it particularly well. But why do I mention this? Because part of one of the great advantages of working in Python is just the library of resources and tools that you have available to you to take advantage of as part of your project. And so, one of the things that I highly recommend when you kind of get started on something is just looking around and seeing what you have available to you. And so, this is just kind of an example. So we talked last week about oh, it's funny, Cindy. Whole Dungeons and Dragons. I had that exact reaction. That's really funny when you saw that. So we talked last week about the fact that there are a lot of different GUI frameworks in Python. Like I mentioned, like I was using Gradio for another project I'm working on right now, and there's a lot of things in there. So, so there's a lot of additional just GUI frameworks in Python, but within frameworks themselves, there are a number of additional libraries and modules designed to extend the functionality of tkinter. Uh, and so, this is only a partial list. And I just kind of pulled these things out. Some of these I've used before, some that I hadn't, but I'd sort of heard of. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Um, and so, again, partialist, but should hopefully kind of give you a feel for just the breadth of things that are really at your fingertips just with a simple import statement. So the first one is up top is themed tkinter, which I know we already kind of talked about because of the combo box. But it gives you sort of an access to sort of additional themed widgets within TK Inter. So um, buttons, labels, entry fields, and then more sort of advanced options as well, and sort of enhanced styling, themes, things like that. Another thing is pillow. So I'm not actually going to be using this one, but one of the things we're going to look at is I'm going to use actually TK Inter's sort of direct image thing, but there's the Python imaging library. So if you're working, particularly if you're working with sort of a lot of images, like not just one or two for stylistic reasons, but you're actually sort of managing like photo galleries or things like that, you probably need um, you probably need stuff, something like Pillow to sort of handle that. And again, it's sort of handling opening, manipulating, saving image file formats. So, again, if you're working an app where you need to upload images and do things like that, right? Pillow gives you that functionality to bake into UI, right? It's really impressive. TTK themes is an extension package here, and I believe is this no, this is the themed widgets one. Did I pull up the themes here? So a lot of sort of pre-designed themes that you can sort of load that sort of give your app sort of some instant stylistic elements, right? Just by importing this TTK themes and sort of setting these themes, you can sort of begin to see here exact same app, but you can get sort of a lot of really nice kind of custom formatting and styling for it. Uh, Admittedly, some of it looks a bit dated, but what do you expect? It's open source. Um, but again, just quick import package and you get that kind of style. Um, let's see. So this one I haven't played around with, but I've read about this. This is gives you sort of like a drag and drop interface that I guess is kind of one of those like no code app development things, right? That have been sort of, there's tons of those floating around, but this idea that you kind of design your interface like, hey, this is what I want, and then it generates all the Python code for you. So kind of a cool idea for that. Similar idea as the CKenter DND, which sadly is drag and drop. Um, so you may have noticed, oftentimes like a modern functionality, like, when it comes to like upload, like if I do, um, like within Drive, if I say, what do I do? If I say open, I think I need to go into here, Drive. If I click new file upload, yeah, you get this. Oh, it doesn't give me that thing. But you've seen that before, right? Where rather than just kind of like, where you can like drag a file and it drops it into your thing and loads it and does things like that. You've probably seen that functionality before, right? You guys know what I'm talking about, right? It's like upload your resume here, and it'll be like a little box, and you just kind of drag your resume and like drop it into the field, and it uploads it for you. Maybe. Yep. Okay. Cool. Yeah. So TK Inter DNT does that, right? Like crazy, right? That level of functionality is kind of just available to you. Another really cool one is TK Sheets. So TK Sheet is allows you to do sort of embedded, um, sort of tabular spreadsheets in your app. So you can actually sort of store data structures like data frames and then represent them in your little TK Inter app as a little spreadsheet that people can kind of access and edit and manipulate right there, directly there. And you can sort of see you get all these nice little forms you can fill out. And again, like behind the scenes, this is all stored in a Python data structure, like a pandas data frame. That's just kind of then rendered here for that. So yeah, so like crazy, right? And again, these are all just free open source just things. You just kind of do an import statement and you're there. So, and again, this is really just a small thing. I just, yeah, if I just Google right now, if I'm like top TK Inter libraries, I'm just kind of curious what Gemini is going to say right now. Like, okay, top level windows, title bars, borders, dialog boxes, secondary windows, GUI designers, PySimple simplifies Tgainer, automatic theming, easier customization, right? I mean, if you want to go deep in this, my point is like there's a lot out here for you. So, so we're really, really just touching the surface on this. So, so do take advantage of that. So, any questions on that? All right. So, okay. So I'll be honest, I didn't really have a whole lot more of like original content for us. Again, I sort of wanted to dive into the weather app. So, but there was also the request to talk AI. So you want to talk AI for like a little bit and then so we take a break and then come back and kind of do the thing, or do you want to start on the app and then maybe take a break? How you guys feeling about it? Okay, so I'm getting a vote for one vote for Talk AI and app after. Then I got break, then AI. I got a vote for either. Okay, so so one vote apiece. Um, so let me see here. 7:05 now. How about this? How about I set up the discussion for the app? I'm just going to demo the app and then depending on the time, maybe we'll talk AI, maybe we won't, and then when we come back, we'll actually do the app. So let me just quickly show you the app itself. So this is going to be us right here. Okay, so this is what I have in store for us tonight, just so you kind of get a feel for it. So we're going to have a location. So you can sort of see already it's sort of a two-dimensional grid. You're going to notice something about the side. I'm going to call it PCC Weather App. I'm going to type in this case, Pasadena, enter, and it's going to say the weather in Pasadena is sunny, high of 75, low of 60. And then I got a little sunshine there. And then I'm going to do Seattle. I'm going to do that. And then rain in Seattle, shockingly, is rainy with the high of 45 and the low of 32. So kind of a balmy day there. So yeah, that's what our weather app's going to be. Now, again, it is uh, right now I have no idea what those numbers are, if they have any basis in reality, but um, yeah. So that's what we're going to be working on. Oh, where's my Zoom? Where is my window? Okay. So, all right. So I'm going to cue that up after the break. Yeah. So let me just, I guess, kind of quickly talk AI. So there was interest in doing sort of developing more AI specific content. We obviously don't have a whole lot of it. Um, and so the thinking is we're going to do that. And yeah, so we proposed it. So I'm part of one of the faculty members doing that. And we're looking at doing right now a certificate, but looking to actually build up an associate's in it. And basically, it would be the requirement would be sort of a Python programming class, an intro to computer science class, that would be through the CS department. Then there would be a intro to uh, AI and machine learning, and more sort of an introductory class for just more generalized AI. Because it's interesting. AI means a lot of different things to different people, and AI fundamentally is basically sort of autonomous machine actions, right? It's the machine doing something where you haven't had to sort of hard code every step to the machine. Like generally speaking, like a lot of the Python programs we think about we don't really, that doesn't really feel like AI because you're telling the machine every step of the way, right? There doesn't feel like there's an inferential step where you are basically sort of giving the machine a goal and the machine's figuring out the detailed steps. And so AI takes a lot of different forms. Uh, it used to be back in the 80s and 90s when we thought about AI, we thought about like expert systems. Then we thought about it in terms of search. Then we thought about it in terms of machine learning. Now we're thinking about it in terms of deep learning, LLMs, things like that. So, again, what we think of as sort of being synonymous with AI has evolved. Um, so, um, yeah, so there's going to be an introductory course. Then there's going to be a course, this is what I'm putting together, which is a machine learning and deep learning course. So it goes in depth on machine learning, all the different approaches to machine learning models, algorithms, how you think about, how you structure, how you train, how you deploy those, as well as sort of an introduction to deep learning. What exactly is deep learning? How does it work? How does it fit in the context of LLMs, things like that? And then there's sort of a couple other courses that we're sort of working on. I think we're looking at like computer vision, we're looking at natural language processing, we're looking at doing AI ethics, ethics around AI, which is obviously a very, very important, very topical discussion. And so, yeah, so this is all being proposed right now. I think, because, everything kind of takes time, I think the goal would be to roll this out not this coming fall, but for next fall. So, yeah, so it would be, I think, fall of 2026. So, take that for what it's worth. But that's kind of that's what we got cooking right now. So I did mention that because I was really excited about that, and that's something we've been working on. So yeah, that's what we got planned. So yeah, I mean, any thoughts, any questions about that? Any interest in something like that? Cool. Well, RB, hope you're still around in a year or two, and we can get you plugged in. So it's a fun space. It's a very topical space, and just a lot of interesting work being done there. I'm excited. Actually, I'm actually just prepared. Talking about AI, I literally have a paper that I'm writing right now as part of my PhD work at UCLA, where we're doing some really cool deep learning work in the healthcare space. I don't know, you want me to talk about? I could give you like the 5 minutes on that. You want the 5 minutes on that? Sure. All right. Cool. Like I needed much coaxing to talk about that. Okay. Who here knows anything about LLMs, like how they work? So firstly, LLM, large language models, right? ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, basically everything that's powering the internet these days. Um, have I talked to you about those? Have you kind of had any kind of conversation about what they are, how they work? Nope. All right. Well, hey, I'm gonna give you the quick and dirty on it. So, uh, at their very, very basic, they're what we call natural language generation models, which means that their whole idea is that they're designed to generate strings of text we call natural language because it's conversational text, conversational human text. And the way it works is sort of deceptively simple. These are what we call probabilistic language models. They use probabilities. They essentially create a string of words, and as they're going along, they sort of figure out, okay, what is the next most likely word in the string, and they kind of append it to it. So if you've ever, for instance, like looked at autocomplete, like you'll be typing out a text message and like your messenger will sort of give you the recommended next word and things like that, right? You've probably seen something like that, right? That's the same basic idea, right? It looks at the word and says, oh, well, the majority of the time, whenever we see this word, we associate this, if you write peanut, we oftentimes expect you to then write butter. You write ice, we expect you to write cream, right? Something like that. We look at, we have a library of books, articles, things like that. We have seen how oftentimes these words appear and what words happen to appear most often with them. And so that's literally what it does. Now, you might say, well, ChatGPT works a lot better than my autocomplete on my text. I don't know if have you ever tried to do that? Just like take the next recommended word in like your autocomplete and just like see where it goes. and it just takes you in like crazy places. You ever done that? Right? And so it goes in complete crazy places. And the reason it does that is because it doesn't it typically just looks at the most previous word, or sometimes like the previous two words or something like that. But the idea being it loses the broader context. So it's just looking at the very last word and then saying, okay, well, for this word, here's what comes next. Oh, for this word, here's what comes next. For this word, here's what comes next. It doesn't look at the rest of, the phrase that you were writing, which is why it sort of descends into chaos after a while if you do it. Um, so the genius of these large language models is that they look at the entire context up until that point. They look at the entire string, the entire prompt, and they choose the next token, the next word, based on everything up until that point. And so that's what makes it so much more accurate and so much more sort of semantically meaningful. Now, here's the trick with that, though. Um, the statistics for this start to break down because it's easy to look at probabilities when you're looking at one word, right? When I, again, um, you know, Apple computer, right? Ford motor, right? Single words, I can sort of do probabilities. But when I start to look at sentences, paragraphs, things like that, the chances of sort of accurately predicting sequences like that, um, become infinitesimally small. Because even if you have a corpus the size of the internet, the reality is the chance that you have seen any particular combination of words in, enough sort of detail, it just kind of, right, there isn't something large enough to accompany that. So these models fall apart if you rely purely on statistics and probabilities. So this is where deep learning comes into play. Deep learning is essentially when we say we don't know what the actual probability is, but we're going to learn a model that's going to guess the probability. And that's what those deep learning, those deep neural nets sort of do, is they guess at the probabilities, right? They're very obviously very good at it. They've learned these patterns, they've learned these things, so they're able to guess it. But that's kind of what they do and how they work. So that's a little background on these deep learning models and things like that. And that's sort of where deep learning falls into that. Okay, so really briefly, my research on this is I'm looking at medical clinical diagnostics and sort of an interesting parallels with that in that, so the idea is if you have a patient presenting with certain array of symptoms, things like that, can you recommend the next diagnostic test to say, okay, well, if we're trying to isolate a diagnosis for this patient, what is the next likely reaction? What test should we provide? What's the likely outcome? Things like that. Um, and so, theoretically, you can sort of think about this as a statistics model. But the problem is, yes, I can look at one test. If you get this test result, what is the chance that you have this disease, right? I can look at that. But what if the patient has this test, but also this test, and also that test, and also this patient has this comorbidity, and has this illness, and has this, particular history, and this patient is this demographic, and this age, and this, weight, and this blood pressure, and this thing. Suddenly, you say, well, what is the probability for this particular patient? And right, we just simply don't have enough data to ever accurately calculate those predictions. So the basic idea is what if we did the exact same thing? What if we translated the entire patient diagnostic progression, right? Patient gets admitted to the hospital, gets an initial diagnosis, initial set of observations are taken, initial set of labs, right? Things like that. We convert that process into a natural language string where I've tokenized all of these sort of things, and then I train a neural net basically to try and predict the next string in this sequence, whether it's what the next diagnostic test is, whether it's what the outcome is, or what the ultimate diagnosis is. So, and see if it'll work, right? Could an LLM actually sort of predict clinical pathways? And so, long story short, what I'm writing and publishing is, yeah, actually, kind of, we did the experiment. It actually kind of works, and it works kind of impressively well. So that's my research. And by the way, just aside, all this is done in Python. We're using like PyTorch um, And yeah, and OpenAI's GPT models, and these are all done in Python. So if you go down the AI route, that's the kind of work you guys would be doing. Maybe not precisely that one, but pretty much. So I guess that's my little plug for the AI certificate, PCC AI certificate, coming soon to a city college near you. But yeah, I know there's a little bit of a tangent, but any questions on that? Cool. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Hey, listen, I always, as you can tell, yeah, I love to talk about my research. So let's take a break. Let's take a little bit of a break. We want to say we'll reconvene 7:30 and then, yeah, and we'll knock out that app. All right. Thanks, guys. Okay. Okay, let me just share screen. So just a reminder. So this is what we're building here. So again, we're gonna have kind of a locate, right? We're gonna have a label there. We're gonna have an entry input, a little button there. We have a main sort of weather status, and then a high temperature and a low temperature. You see there's some default label values there. And then if I enter in a thing, so I can Pasadena, weather in Pasadena is sunny. Right, you're gonna see here we get a nice little graphic there, and we update the information. So that's what we're going towards. Okay, so let's kind of build this out. So I'm gonna start a brand new sort of window here. So let's just kind of build our thing. So first we're going to do an import statement, right? Import uh, tk inter, yep, as tk. Then I'm going to do, I think I need to do, yeah, and then I'm going to do themed tk inter as well. So I'm going to say, I think I need that as well. I will say from tk inter, import ttk. All right. So now, so now I'm going to build my overall sort of window box. So you may remember this here. Um, so first I do my root, right? So root in this case is going to be, right, that's my main sort of base application window. So root is going to be an object of the TK library, TK class, right? So that's going to be our little root thing there. And now we're going to get some basic sort of overall like root information. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a title. So I'm going to say root dot title is equal to, let's just call this uh, PCC CIS and 2 weather. So that's going to be on the top of the window there. One other thing I didn't do this time that I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a geometry thing, and that's going to set the overall window dimensionality in terms of pixels. So in this case, I'm going to say root dot geometry. So again, these are going to be methods for this, and then I'm going to set our little parameters. So in this case, it's going to be a single string where I set the dimensions. I'm going to do 650 by 250. So 650 pixels by 250 pixels. All right. And then if I go all the way down, I'm just going to do, all the way on the bottom, I'm going to do my little main loop, and save that. And that should at least get our little app running. It's not going to do much, but at least going to get it running. So let's take a look. Oh, let me exit out of this. Grab our new one here. So I'm in documents. I think I saved that right. This is Pasadena weather app. Okay. Python, Pasadena weather app dot py. Okay, go. PCC CIS112 weather app. And you see here, it's resized the window here. So I have a nice little window there. All right. I'm going to pause here. See everybody with me so far. Anybody get stuck kind of getting this far? I'm seeing at least a thumbs up. All right. So we ready to rumble? Okay, cool. All right, so let's, kind of like last time, right? Let's just kind of start building out our things here. So you may remember first row, there's going to be so let me terminate this. There's going to be kind of a few things we're going to do. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do a grid. Sorry, we're going to do a grid as our overall layout, but for the first row, we're going to do a label that's going to say location, an entry box, and then a button, right? Those are going to be sort of the two things we're going to do. So let's start building it. And I'm going to do it above there. All right. So first step, I'm going to build, I'm going to call it first row. It's going to be, so now I'm going to do my, I'm just going to call it location label is equal to, and so this is going to be a TK label. This is going to be an object of the label. Oh no, capitalized, right? Because remember, it's a class. So these are going to be objects of that. And then remember, the first input, it belongs to root, right? We always do that. And then the next thing is going to be the text. So in this case, the text is going to be, in this case, I'll do something like location. Now, one thing I'm going to add this time that I didn't do last time is I'm going to add some padding here. And I played around with this before, but padding allows me to add a little bit of kind of buffer right between this and the other elements here. So I'm going to add padding on the x-axis. Specifically, I'm going to add 10 pixels for that along the x-axis, and then padding on the y-axis of 5. And again, these are, you can play around with that. That's just kind of what I found that felt like it looked good for me. So I'm going to do pad x is equal to 10. And then, but you can sort of see here all the different parameters for this, and pad y is going to be equal to 5. All right, so I'm going to get that. So that's going to be the first thing. And now that I've created that, I'm going to immediately place it. So I'm going to place it. Now I'm going to do a location label, and I'm going to do grid instead of place or stack grid. And now for grid, I need to specify column and row. And so Python, by being zero indexed, means the first kind of coordinate position for both is going to be 0. So if I want to put it in the top left corner, I need to do 0, 0. So in this case, column equals 0, row equals also 0. All right. So let's just save that. And again, let's just kind of run this. Why is this? Why is that in the red? Is there something wrong with that? What's the problem? It is closed. What? It is, what? All right, whatever. I'm just going to run it. Okay, fine. All right. See, document. Comma after location. Let me see. Oh, thank you. Yes, you're right. Thank you. There was no comma after that. Thank you. Yep, that would do it. Good catch. Excellent. Yeah, okay, now it's happy. Brilliant. Okay, thank you. All right, so CD documents, and I'm going to do Python. See, is that my, okay, so let's see here. All right, location, cool. All right, top left corner, awesome. Got my first little thing there. Nothing too fancy, but we're cooking now. All right, so now next thing I'm gonna do is my little entry form here. So I'm gonna do, it's just gonna be an entry. So I'm just gonna call this location entry, shockingly. In this case, it's going to be TK entry. And again, first thing, as you might anticipate, is just going to be root. And that's all we need to do for it. I'm not going to do anything more specified. But now I'm going to place it on our grid. So location entry dot grid. So in this case, row stays the same, right? It's still going to be row 0, but this time column is going to be column 1. So I can say column 1. Sorry, equals 1, row equals 0. All right. Then finally, I'm going to do the button for that. So now I'm going to create a button. I'm just going to call it update button is equal to TK button. Again, first thing is root. And now for this text is going to be the text of the button. Text equals, and we're going to call this, I'm just going to call it, I'm going to say, find weather, maybe. Yeah. All right. And then there's going to be the command thing, but we're not going to do that now. So we're going to leave that there. And then as you might infer, update button. Grid is simply going to be column 2, row equals 0. All right, so let's run our little app again. And there we go. We've got location and find weather. Perfect. Row 1 is in the bag. All right. So row 2 is going to be my overall summary thing. So in this second row here, I'm going to put, some like overall weather. I'm going to say like rainy or sunny, and then I'm going to have my little image thing there. But I'm going to play around with the styling a little bit for this. So I'm actually going to do what's called a column span for this. Um, what I mean by that is I'm going to um, basically have it take up. I'm going to sort of center it right around here, right? So this is column 0, column 1, column 2. So I'm going to essentially place it right in the middle of these three things here. And maybe I can do column span 2. Originally, my notes I had column, well, whatever. I'll just do what I had in my notes. So I'm going to do that. And then I'm also going to do the image. And critically with the image, you're going to see here, I'm going to leave the image blank for the moment. Um, excuse me. It's going to be a bit of a placeholder that, again, I'm not going to do anything now, but I'm going to use that config update that we did last week, that little trick, to actually insert the image in later. So right now it's just going to be kind of a placeholder. That's what we're going to do for that. So, okay, so second row, going to be, all right, so now again, so first thing we're new here is I'm just going to call this weather label equals TK label, and it goes in the root, and now we're going to have a default text for this. And now my text is going to be something like current weather NA, because we don't have any weather right now, right? Oh, sorry, that needs to be in a string. All right, and then our little weather label dot grid. So in this case, let me do this. I'm going to say row is equal to 1, because it's going to be the first row. Column is equal to 0, but I'm going to now add something here. I'm going to add a third thing, a column span. Yep, right there. And 3. So I'm going to have it basically span rows 1, 2, and 3. Just quickly take a look, see what that looks like. So you see here how it places it right in the middle of it? See how it sort of centered it right in the middle of those three things? And that's sort of why, because again, it's spanning, even though it's technically one column, it's spanning those three. So I basically kind of merged those columns for that particular one. So I've done that. And now I'm going to do my little image. So I'm going to do I'm just going to call it weather image. And interestingly enough, weather image is also going to be a label. We use label not just for text, obviously, for image as well. The only difference is now, is this going to be, so I'm going to say, okay, so firstly root, but instead of using text, you're going to notice here there's an image parameter that I can use. So I'm going to say image is equal to, and I'm just going to leave it blank for now. But the idea here that that's sort of, so I can use that label. Basically, labels kind of when I want like tech or content on the screen, basically. It can be text, or obviously in this case, it can be an image. And again, right now it's going to be blank, but when we do a config update based on the input, we're going to then place it there. So now I'm going to place this. So I'm going to say weather image is equal to, oh, sorry, weather image grid. And in this case, it's going to be row equals 1 and column equals 3. So we're going to put, right, because this spans 3, so 0, 1, 2, and then this is going to be in the third one. Okay, so that's our second row. Now, finally, in our third row, we're going to have the high and the low temperature. All right, so third row. Okay, so I'm just going to call it high temp label. Yep, high temp label equals, you might already figure out where we're going with this, TK label, root, and then text equals high, and then I'm just going to put NA. And then this one, I'm going to put it in right row 2. And this one, I'm going to sort of spread them equally. Like if we're looking at 4 columns, basically, I'm going to have this put in column 0 and span 2 columns. And then the other one's going to go in column 2 and then span 2 columns. All right, so we're going to do high temp label grid is going to be row equals 2. Column equals 0, and then column span equals 2. All right, and I'm just going to copy this and change this to low, low, and low. In this case, row 2, column 2, call span 2. All right, let's run this again. Okay, so we have the basic outline of our thing there. It doesn't really do anything particularly interesting at this point, but, you know, we have it. Now, by the way, I apologize. I should have shared these files and I didn't, and I'm sorry for that. But you can just kind of Google and download any image. I found just some random like here. I found so the ones I found here were like, let me see here. It was like it's like a Sun 50. Yeah, sun50.png. So you can download any like PNG file and just store it in the same directory. So here's my little sun one, and then rain was literally just like rain.png. So yeah, you can just like Google any of these and just download them um, into the same directory that your app is in. So that's the only thing I'd mention here. So because we're gonna basically load these into here. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to load them into our little environment here. And then again, the idea is we're going to sort of place them. And to do that, we're going to specifically create an object called that's sort of the photo image TK class. All right. So now I'm going to actually stick that. Where am I going to stick that? I don't think it matters, but just to be safe, I will. I guess it doesn't matter. I guess I can put it here. We'll see if it matters. Okay. I was going to say images. All right. So the first thing I'm going to call it is I'm going to call this sun image. So some image is going to be an object of the TK photo image class. And for there, I just simply, the input parameter for that is going to be file. So whatever your file name is, again, just to make this easy, if you're not dealing with paths, just put this in the same directory as wherever you're storing this. So in this case, it's going to be sun. So mine in particular is sun50.png. Whatever file you're using, again, you can sort of do the same thing. You may have noticed that that photo was pretty massive, right? Something when I blew it, it was like full screen. There's a way to resize it, and we're going to actually resize it. And I don't have a good metric for this. For me, I just kind of played around with this, and what I found was in this case, the sun image equals, and I need to do sun image dot subsample 16. And again, I just had to play around with it, but that shrunk it down to a size that I thought was appropriate. Because it obviously started out being very large. I'm going to do the same thing for this rain image. Rain image is equal to tk dot photo image. And in this case, again, file is equal to rain dot png. And then rain image. And again, for this one, I subsampled mine by the rain image by 12. Again, there's no, you just kind of have to play around with it and resize it. I don't have a good like metric for what that's going to look like. Uh, Subsample 12 gave me that. All right, so now I've loaded these in. I've created a sun image and I've created a rain image, but I haven't actually placed it in my thing yet. So what's ultimately going to happen, so remember, if you're looking at this app here, the person's going to enter something here, right? They're going to say, Seattle or whatever, Seattle or Pasadena or something like that. They're going to input it here and then it's going to capture it. So we have to have the logic for doing that. And so we're going to now create the method that when I click on my little, my little button here, right, my little find weather button, my little command, it's going to execute it. So I'm going to create my little utility function up here. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to call this update weather, right? Something silly. Update. Oh, missed it. Weather. All right, so it's going to be a function. There's going to be no inputs to it because it's just going to be a thing. So the first thing is I'm going to grab, so I have to grab whatever the input is. So you may remember that the entry, the location entry, has a get method. And the get method says basically whatever text is in there, it kind of says, hey, buddy, bud, hey, sweet. Okay, buddy, I'm going to be in can you tell Mama I'm going to be in about 10 to 15 minutes to read you a bedtime story. Yeah, 10 to 15 minutes, okay? Thank you, honey. Was your math class good? Did you have fun? You loved it? Oh, I'm delighted, sweetie. Okay, yeah, you can tell Mama I'm gonna be in no later than 15 minutes, okay? All right. Okay. So remember this entry, 15 minutes, 1 5. Okay, so location, so any entry has a get method, right? And the get method allows us to say whatever the user has sort of entered into it, grab it and store it, right? So in this case, we're going to say location is equal to location entry dot get. So whatever the user happens to have typed in at that moment, grab it, store it, right? As a string, as a local variable. And then we can just do sort of basic branching. So I can say, if, and now I can sort of do matching. So I can do if location. And by the way, one thing I'm going to mention here is I'm going to actually do a transformation thing here. I'm going to do the lower. I don't know if you remember that. That's a string transformation that takes all the string characters and lowers them. It's an easy way of standardizing because, what if the person types in Pasadena, but they capitalize the P, right? So, it's not going to match the string if you have it in lowercase. So in that case, you sort of have to set it to be um, uh, so you standardize it basically. So it doesn't matter if they are all caps or capitalize, lowercase, you sort of do that. But so here, if it's equivalent to Pasadena, so now you may remember we get to update, we get to do all those label configs where we modify the text to be whatever we want it to be. Okay. So let's say, so let's grab our things here. So the first thing is going to be weather label. So right now it says current weather. So here, so we're going to say, so if look at so weather label dot config. In this case, what are we configuring? We're configuring text is equal to, and let's grab our string here. And instead of current weather NA, we're going to say I'm going to make it the format current. I will say current weather in location. I'll say 75. Oh no, current weather in location. I'll say, sorry, sunny. Sunny and 75. Let's just make it that. All right. So we're going to update that. We're also going to update the image. Where's our little image? Weather image. So a little weather image config. Except now for the image, it's going to be, we're going to set the image parameter to be equal to sun image. And then we're going to set high temp label to be config. And what do we have right now? Text equals, let's call it 82. And then low temp label config text equals, and then I will grab low is going to be 65. All right. Okay, so let's just quickly take a look. Let's relaunch our little app. Okay, so here, so if I say Pasadena, find weather. Ooh, what? No. Well, oh, yeah, I missed one key thing. What did I miss? Pop quiz. What did I miss, guys? Good. Oh, Cindy, you got it. Yes, exactly. We did not have our little command thing for our button, right? When we pushed the button, it didn't actually work. So we need to go back here. We need to change command to being update weather. Exactly. We need to execute that script when we do it. So let's try that again. All right. Pasadena, find weather, and boom. Current weather in Pasadena, sunny and 75. Little sun there, high is 82, low is 65. All right, and then you can sort of see how we could very easily just sort of copy this and change this. I can say ELIF, as I was picking on Seattle earlier. So I can say rainy and 53. Change it to be rain image. High day is 67, low is 42. Okay, let's run that again. Seattle, boom. Look at that, got my nice little rainy thing there. Pasadena, boom, got that. Looking nice. Otherwise, so what if I do like that? I don't really have anything. So I might actually just sort of there change. I might just do a little input validation where I say else, in this case, I'm going to do weather label config. I might say, please enter a. All right, so now if I do that, So now again, all right, Pasadena, New York. Ooh, please enter a valid location. Fine. Seattle, and boom. So there we go. All right, questions on that? I know I kind of ran through that, but the reality is kind of once you get going on this, right, a lot of it is just kind of pretty repetitive. It's just kind of creating the widget and placing it, right? There's a lot of repetition in these things once you get going. Nice. How are we feeling about that weather app? Good? All right, let's talk then let's pull up the old canvas and let's talk assignment for the week. Okay, so we are 112. Let's see what I have in store for you all. Module 4, Lab 2. Okay, yes, so we're going to do an ordering kiosk this week. Okay, so the idea is basically we're going to we want um, why don't you do an ordering kiosk? It's a slightly more complicated version of what we've done up to this point. But yeah, so the application should allow customers to enter their name, uh, should be able to choose whether or not to add a drink to their order, select an entree from the provided options, and then afterwards should display their entire order details upon submission. And critically for this, I want you to potentially utilize a theme for it if you can, and it will earn you extra credit. Okay? So this is what I'm looking for. So again, um, oh, did I? Oh, dang it. I didn't talk about class, did I? Oh, dang it. I didn't talk about class format for this. Okay, you know what? If you don't use class for this, that's okay, because I didn't realize I didn't talk about that. Bummer. Okay, so try to see if you can do this. So I'm going to actually make the class thing bonus points too. If you were able to do this as a class structure, which is actually really cool, but we didn't have a chance to talk about it. I will talk about it next week, though. I realize I didn't talk about that, so we will talk about that next week. If you can do this as a class, you can look up online how to sort of do that. It'll be pretty cool. It's not that hard. It's basically, I'm just going to tell you right now, it's basically kind of everything you've done here. You sort of do, but just wrap this within a class, and then all of these become basically uh, attributes of it. So it becomes instead of root, it's self.root, and self.root.title. Like all these things basically just become self. These become class methods, and then when you create the app itself, there's an extra step here. When you launch it, you sort of create the TK instance, and you say the app is an instance of this. So there's really only two steps. It's actually really trivial to do this, but I didn't talk about it, so I will. Um, so if you don't do it, that's fine. But again, you should have the following features. But do try to do it if you can. Um, an entry widget for customers to enter their name, a check button to allow customers to choose whether to add a drink to their order, a combo box with options for them, a submit button for their order, and then a label that will nicely format their order upon submission. And so you should display the order details, including the customer's name, drink choice if selected entree, upon clicking the submit button. Um, Try to do error handling to display a message if the customer's name is not provided or if no entree is selected upon submission. So if they submit and they don't have a name, correct for that. And also if they fail to choose an entree, correct for that. Okay. So again, class structure, extra credit. Also extra credit if you utilize a theme for this. Do try to do that though. Because again, let's try to sort of style it up a little bit. Beyond that, though, again, sort of basic widget functionality, I want to see that you have those widgets, right? An entry widget, a check button, a combo box, and a button. for that. Proper error handling, I'm going to look at the code quality as well. Just like last time, I'm going to ask you to create the Python file as a .py, and then you're going to upload it here for credit. So I'll download it, I'll run the file, and I'll see how it works. Any questions on that? All right, guys. Well, that's Oh, wait a second. Just trying to resize my image, letting that larger numbers make the image. Yes. Cindy, thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, the magnitude, that's the magnitude of the shrink. I don't know exactly how it works, but yes, you're exactly right. The higher the number, the correspondingly smaller the image becomes. It's the degree to which you're subsampling it. Oh yes, Munina, please do. Yes. So if you do have images, that's a great point. Either upload them, or maybe just upload a zip file that includes the images. But yeah, please do, Munina. Yeah, that would be awesome. Like if you have like a logo for your restaurant or something like that, that would be really cool. But yeah, do try to have fun with this assignment. I'd sort of again, technically, this is one of those things. Like it's not technically that much more challenging, frankly, beyond what we've already done. Um, the goal here is really just for you to sort of let your imaginations run wild with this one. I really want you to kind of be able to play around with this and get a feel for exactly, precisely the kind of functionality. Because again, this is the sort of thing that like, you didn't even necessarily realize you could do something like this. And then suddenly it's like, wow, like I can do it. And it's actually shockingly trivial to do. Um, so yeah, I kind of want you to feel empowered to sort of run with this and have some fun and really try to kind of create something, that you can kind of show off. Be like, hey, look at my little ordering kiosk that I built for my own little, my own little ramen shop or my own little, my own little bagel shop or whatever. Yeah, so have some fun with it. That's kind of what I'm looking for with this. GUIs are a fun, they're a fun thing to do because right, you can build these kind of things. You can have a little imagination on it. So, all right, any other questions on that? All right, amazing. I'm gonna stop the recording there.